Where are we at in society today? Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
Go ahead. Make my day.
Every single week, I put my freaking heart and soul into this. I don't go out there and laugh. It's not funny. It's not fun. Nothing's funny to me. I don't want to go out there and get embarrassed on Monday Night Football in front of everybody.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
So ain't nothing changed from yesterday. Still the same person I was yesterday. And I got the same thing for you that I had yesterday. You know why I'm here.
You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it. That's the great thing about sports. You play to win. And I don't care if you don't have any wins. You go play to win. When you start telling me it doesn't matter, then retire. Get out. Because it matters.
All right, here we go on a Monday. Hope you had a great weekend, everybody. And what a scintillating weekend it was in football in general. So looking forward to talking with you about that right here on X's and Bros across the great state of Michigan. The Meyer hotline is open for you, 866-838-4843. You can always text the program, Sports Radio, to 21,000. We are live throughout the state on our great station affiliates, wherever you may be, in Cadillac and in Grand Rapids and in Kalamazoo and in Holland and in Petoskey and Charlevoix and Lansing and Traverse City. And, of course, we are live on X at XB Mornings. We are live on Facebook, and we are live, of course, on YouTube. And that is, you can follow us there at X's and Bros. I'm Matt Shepard. Lions will close out Week 17 tonight with a Monday night kick in San Francisco, 11 months after losing a 17-point lead in the NFC Championship game, losing by 3 to the Niners. Detroit returns to the scene of the crime against the Niners in a game that really does not matter. It is all about next weekend for the Lions against the Minnesota Vikings, because Minnesota able to hold off Green Bay 27-25 in a hell of a football game. Sam Darnold throws for a career-best 377 yards and 3 touchdowns. He now has 35 touchdowns. That is the 4th most in NFL history for a player in their first year with a team. Matthew Stafford is number 1 while playing for the Rams. Sam Darnold is number 4. The Vikings ran 70 plays for 441 total yards. They're now 14-2, and they have a chance to be the number 1 seed in the NFC if they go into Ford Field next weekend and upset the Lions. And the reason it doesn't matter if Detroit happened to lose tonight would matter if they beat Minnesota next weekend. They win the tiebreakers against the Vikings. If they win tonight against San Francisco, they and Minnesota are tied at 14-2. You can figure that out. And, of course, the winner take all next weekend. Red Wings snap a 4-game slide. They score 4 times in the first, and they double up Washington 4-2. That's what you love about sports, man. Who would have thought this? Absolutely crazy. Alex DeBrincat scores twice. Lucas Raymond and Patrick Kane, each with a goal and an assist. And for Kane, he now has 1,300 career points. He is the second U.S.-born player to ever boast that many. Mike Modano, the former Red Wing, Dallas Star, also in that company, and a guy who is from the state of Michigan, Westland, Michigan. And he's the 38th player to ever do that. Alexander Ovechkin did score again, so he is now 25 goals away from passing Wayne Gretzky for most goals in a career. There was a time a couple of years ago I did not think this was possible, but it sure seems most likely for Alexander Ovechkin. And by the way, last night, Sidney Crosby also got an assist in Pittsburgh's game, so he passes Mario Lemieux for most assists in a Pittsburgh career. Here's our poll question for the day. Would you rest, if you're the Lions, Would you rest some starters against the Niners tonight? It's a simple yes or no. Dan Campbell has already made it known he's not going to do that. Got to love that part about Dan Campbell. You're going out there, you're playing to win the football game tonight. I love that about him. I have no issue with that whatsoever. I know there are some people who feel like, oh my God, you got to rest them, play a bunch of scraps. San Francisco's got all kinds of guys out. Christian McCaffrey is out. Brandon Ayuk is out. Trent Williams is out. Nick Bosa is out. They're going to have 2 third-string offensive linemen out there. Rest some guys. Don't know who you'd rest, okay? I don't know who you think is going to play because there's only so many guys you have on a football team. I like going out there, staying in rhythm, staying out there, getting your stuff done. That's personally my opinion. But we'll get yours via the poll question at XB Mornings. You can vote as often as you want. Would you rest some starters against the Niners tonight? Yes or no? 8 o'clock hour, we give you the results from Friday's poll question. We've got our daily wager, and Monday mornings, we do this at 8:18 every Monday morning. We give you our hero and our heel for the weekend. Perhaps, just perhaps, your hero might be Todd McClellan and the Detroit Red Wings. This is what I love about the Red Wings' new coach. I love he's completely different. Oftentimes, you'll see coaches go, owners, general managers, when they hire a new coach, it's completely different from the last one. All right, you go from one guy who might stoke the fires, be rah-rah, be in your face, to a much more calming player or a calming coach. You might go from an offensive-minded guy in football to a defensive-minded guy in football. You know, it happens. This is the way it goes. That's kind of what the Red Wings have done here. Derek Lalonde, a little bit more reserved, kind of laid back, kind of calming. Todd McClellan is much more passionate. And that doesn't mean he wants to win more than Derek Lalonde. It's just mean he's more of an outward kind of guy who wears his emotions on his sleeve. He's not afraid to get in guys' face. He's not afraid to challenge players. He has always been that kind of player or kind of coach, and he has brought that to the Wings as well. Detroit gets their first win under McClellan. He gets his first win as a head coach since January 31st when he was with the Kings. And the Red Wings get their first win for the first time since December 18th because they had lost 4 games in a row, including his first game to Toronto. They beat a Washington team that is very good, appears to be at this point playoff bound, and you got to give them a ton of credit. They jump out to an early lead, and there was a quote last night that I thought was pretty appropriate. It's like many people feel like the NHL is a 3-goal league. Once you get to 3 goals, then you should be in pretty good shape. It is tough to come from behind. It's tough to score in the NHL. We know that for the most part. So 3 goals oftentimes get you off to a really good start. Detroit did that. They scored 4 goals in the first period. They got the win. They had more energy. I know it seems like that. It seemed like they had much more spunk to them, much more jump. And that was always a good sign. They've been missing that. It became a little bit more blasé for the Wings in the past. And now perhaps this will jumpstart them into something a little bit more special because it's been a very frustrating season for anyone who's a big Red Wings fan. All right, when we come back, it's time to talk a little football for sure. Since some big news hit the Detroit airwaves after our show went off the air on Friday. We'll get to that at 6:35. But when we come back, you feel good when you're a Detroit Lions fan right now. Even though Minnesota won yesterday, you feel good that you're a Lions fan. Which fan base would be worse off? We had 2 teams playing yesterday. I'm watching this game and I'm thinking, I can't tell you which one I'd rather be. One vying for a playoff spot, the other vying for the number 1 seed. We'll get to that when we come back as we kickstart things on a Monday morning on X's and Bros with us.
Hey, Michigan, let's go.
when the Lions are off, and they were off for the weekend, they're at San Francisco tonight to finish things up on week 17. But when the Lions are off, I watch a ton of other football games. And I feel like sometimes Sunday's an absolute waste. I love watching the NFL, but I'm watching these other games, and I try to put myself, this is kind of stupid, I'm sure, but I try to put myself in the fans' perspective of certain teams. So you're there and you're watching. I mean, Christmas Day is a really good example. I'm thinking, who in their right mind is in Houston watching the end of that game with the Chiefs trucking the Texans? Made no sense to me. I mean, what a waste of a Christmas Day if you're a Houston Texans fan. But yesterday I'm watching a bunch of different games and I'm thinking, man, it's like the Raiders and Saints. That's a tough game to watch, right? And I'm watching the Colts and Giants, and I'm thinking, which fan base has got it worse? And the reason I say that is because the Colts are a game under 500. They're trying to get to 500. They're trying to stay alive in the playoff race, and they may not make it even if they happen to win the game. And I'm looking at it from a Giants perspective, and I know exactly what's happening. People are probably there in East Rutherford, New Jersey, rooting to a certain extent against their team. They'd like to see them play well, but lose because they have the number one overall pick. And if they win, then that ruins the opportunity to get the number one overall pick. I don't think there is one guy out there, maybe Travis Hunter, but one guy out there overall that you want to lose for, quote unquote, tank for. Giants somehow, behind Drew Lock, able to snap their 10-game losing streak and eliminated the Colts in that game, 45-33. And I thought for some, personal entertainment, I would kind of scroll through what New Yorkers, Giants fans, were saying about this. And the reason I say that is because I had a pretty good idea of what you were going to see on social media. You were going to see fans screaming that New York finally won a game and how frustrated they probably were. And again, who's that number one overall pick that the Giants have to have? Everybody knows they need a quarterback. So do you lose for Cam Ward? Do you lose for Shadir Sanders? Right now, you'd be the number 4 pick. Maybe one of those guys you feel is a franchise quarterback. I can't say that I necessarily believe that. Doesn't mean I'm right. I don't know. It's very strange. Anyway, so there's a number of different types of tweets out there that I was laughing at, and I made note of some of them. The Giants lose the first overall pick. Colts are going to miss the playoffs. And then there's a picture of Drew Lock, and it says, "Local man ruins everything." Got to be a Giants fan. Colts already had a slim shot at making the playoffs this year. Have a young, unpolished, but promising QB and other pieces. If the Giants don't get help with the draft order, they could set them back another 5 years or so. People are frustrated. Draft pick wise, this win was harsh for the Giants. They dropped to number 3. I think they're number 4 now. They need to lose next week, and every team ahead of them win next week to get the number 1 overall pick. People plotting ways, frustrated that their team finally wins. My favorite, actually, it's hard for me to describe, but it's 2 girls standing on top of a hood, dancing to a song, and one girl crying while trying to dance at the same time. It's pretty funny. This was a good one. It's been 6 years since the Giants won a game their fans wanted them to win, or lost a game their fans wanted them to lose. Yes. And then finally, this dude, a picture of a guy who's wearing a Giants jersey with a bag over his head that says, "Fire everyone," while drinking a beer at the same time. Phenomenal stuff. It is, I get it. I do. There's a part of you that says, the only way my team gets better is if they lose. Why you would pay a ticket to that is beyond me. Why you pay a ticket to go watch your team and hope that they lose is a little strange to me, but it looked like it was a sold out stadium. I can't say for certain because I wasn't there, but it sure looked like a sold out stadium to me. I was thinking to myself, I get why the Giants fans are acting the way they do, because the only way to get better is to get some better talent in there. And you feel like top of the draft in various rounds is going to make you better. Same guys making the draft picks that perhaps you've been frustrated with. So I don't know if that totally figures or cures all your ills. But if you're the Colts fan, you're not going anywhere, right? Even if you get to 500, yes, you absolutely want to reach the playoffs because, as we always say, anything can happen, right? Colts aren't going to do anything against Kansas City or against Buffalo or against some of the teams that, are on the edge right now. Cincinnati, for example, that it has a possibility of reaching. Denver has a possibility of reaching. Colts aren't in that realm by any stretch. Which fan base would be worse? The Lions fans, we've been there. We understand that. We understand how frustrating it can be to win certain games when you really feel like if your team loses, you're going to get better draft picks. And there are certain guys that you want and need on your team. Thankfully, that is not the case right now. But the Giants fans, I didn't quite hear the booing while watching that game, but that's kind of how they were feeling on social media right afterwards. Frustrated. Drew Lock, he's got 4 touchdown passes, and he rushes for a couple more. It was amazing, and people in the stadium are sitting there cheering, right? But overall, deep down inside, you know what they're thinking? Oh crap! I wanted him to see him score, but I don't want them to win this game. It was a weird feeling taking place. The other thing I noticed over the weekend was the amount of phenomenal catches made by wide receivers. The Amari Cooper touchdown catch was unbelievable. There were some of the best catches I have ever seen by wide receivers. Couple other things. Saquon Barkley passes 2,000 yards. He's got 2,005 now to be exact. So he is 101 yards away from passing Eric Dickerson's single season record. And Brock Bowers sets 2, not just franchise, but NFL rookie records. Amazing what Brock Bowers has been able to do and kind of flies under the radar. The last thing, and then we'll get to the Lions discussion, and that'll come up at 6:35. The last thing is Joe Burrow throws for more touchdown passes in their victory. That was a fun win, man. I don't know if you watched much of that Cincinnati game, but that was a lot of fun. Joe Burrow if Cincinnati gets into the postseason, how come he is not, like right now, all you're hearing, Barkley pushes himself back into the MVP conversation. Burrow throws for 3 more touchdowns. This was on Saturday, and is by far and away the leader in that category. His numbers are crazy. Okay. He's thrown for over 4,600 yards. He's got touchdown passes now. He's thrown 14, I believe, in the last 4 games, something like that. He's got 42 touchdowns on the year and only 9 picks or 8 picks. How come he's not being mentioned more often? We've talked about it, but he still can't get into the conversation despite another phenomenal effort on Saturday. Amazing what he has done. Any other year, he's by far and away the winner of the most valuable player or offensive player of the year. When we come back, we'll talk about the Lions and the Niners, the matchup. And we've got big news that hit the airwaves on Friday regarding the Tigers. We'll get your thoughts on that as we roll on a Monday morning on X's and BrO's.
Huge here for my good friend Josh Garvey. Now, Josh
One of the crazier stats I've ever read. You ready? You know, we all know former President Jimmy Carter passed away over the weekend, right? Babe Ruth hit more homers in Jimmy Carter's lifetime than any other active player in the Major League Baseball right now. Babe Ruth hit 430 homers when from the time Jimmy Carter was born. And the next closest player from an active player standpoint was Giancarlo Stanton, 429. Is that nuts?
That is. That also makes me feel old.
I can't get over that statistic. That's amazing to me. All right. I do want to talk a little baseball regarding the Gleyber Torres signing by the Tigers, but I want to dive into tonight about the Lions and the Niners, because our poll question right now is, would you sit any Lions starters? And Trent and I have a disagreement, a healthy disagreement, on this mindset. Personally, I would not. I love that Dan Campbell has decided, you know, we're going to go out there and we're going to try to win the football game. That's what it's about. It's about competing. I would preface this by saying, if there was a veteran player, or if there was someone who could use some time, a little extra time to get healthy, Zadarius Smith, let's just use that as an example, okay? Taylor Decker, if they feel like it would behoove them physically and perhaps mentally, because it's a long, hard season, and they needed a day off, sure. If I was head coach, I would say absolutely. But I would not go in seeking to rest my players. And the response we oftentimes get is, it doesn't mean anything. And it's one of my biggest pet peeves in sports, is when people say it doesn't mean anything, when deep down inside, as a competitor, as someone who participated in sports in the past, you should know that every game means something to somebody. So we were talking about that Giants game earlier and how Giants fans were probably rooting against their team to lose that game. Easy for us, convenient for us, and no doubt long run would have been more beneficial for us as fans. When you have to realize that the players who are actually out there to earn the paycheck are the ones who are also saying, you know what, I don't want my job to be taken. I am playing for a job. I'm playing for my livelihood right now. You need to understand that. You would think you would by now for all the sports that you watch. I think back to a number of times when Prince Fielder played for the Tigers. You may be thinking, what the hell are you talking about? I'll get to it in a minute. Prince Fielder played for the Tigers, and I was hosting shows. People would rip him because the Tigers are losing. Camera shot shows him in the dugout, yucking it up with some other players, smiling and laughing. You've got to be pissed off at all times. Your emotion has to match mine. So he gets blamed because he's not caring enough. Other players, they don't run hard through the bag, and it pisses you off because you've paid hard-earned money to go watch them, and they're not giving it their all. You get upset about load management in the NBA because you're going to go to one game at Little Caesars Arena. You expect to be entertained by Victor Wembanyama, LeBron James, whoever it may be, and they get a load management game. You play a game for a living, for crying out loud. You play a kid's game and you're a multimillionaire. Get out there and play. I can't take a day off when I want to take a day off. My boss tells me I've got to punch that clock. And now it's, oh, I don't want them to play. I don't want them to play because they might get hurt. It doesn't mean anything to them. Guess what? You can't play sports fearing to get hurt. that's when you do get hurt. I sure as hell hope nobody gets hurt for the Lions or the Niners. We've seen it all year, folks, on the defensive side of the ball primarily, that the Lions have gotten hurt on a pretty regular basis. They weren't playing not to get hurt. They were playing all out. So that's part of sports. Injuries are part of sports. You don't have enough guys to just sit there and say, wipe them all clean, sit every starter, play every backup at every single position, knowing how that has already hurt the Lions.
I don't think anyone's saying that, though. I don't think anyone's saying play every backup.
Okay, so who are you saying then?
What, Shep? Do you at least understand?
Have something in mind. Tell me. What are you saying? You want to see Hendon Hooker?
No. What I am simply saying is, if a guy like Jack Campbell or Brian Branch or Taylor Decker, I thought that's a perfect example, says, who's played all season, stayed healthy all season, is like, okay, tonight's game means nothing. I know what's on the line next week. I would like to be 100% next week. And if they asked for it, this is where I think you and I agree. If the player wants to sit out, let them sit out. You don't need to rip the player if they want to sit out in a meaningless game tonight with everything on the line next week when they have played 100% healthy all season and they've lost 2 games. Like, I do think it's a little different.
Decker obviously has been hurt. He's a veteran. I think
I can cut some guys some slack. You know what I mean?
And Decker together is a little strange. Those two, the 2 young guys, they're in their second year. I want you to think about this for a second.
But they're the
you're
2.
In your second year, you're going to go to the head coach and say, I'm tapping out for this one. How do you think that looks for everybody else? If you're a veteran, I don't care who the veteran is. If you're a veteran on that team and you see that, what do you think? What are you thinking that you're a young guy and you're bagging out on a game like this? There are other factors involved. You want them to, you're a future leader of this football team, if not a leader right now, and you're going to go to the coaches in your second year and say, Coach, I'm out. I want to save myself for Minnesota.
But Shep, you talk about other factors involved. I don't disagree with you as much as it sounds, but don't you think one of those factors has to be that there's 20 plus guys on IR for this team right now? And you can't, I completely agree with you that you don't have enough guys to just play the backups I get that. I'm not that naive. But what I'm saying is you also don't have enough guys to say, God forbid, 2 guys get hurt tonight. Then you're even more depleted next. You have to look big picture. And the reason I bring up Branch and Campbell is because I'm talking about the best players remaining on your defense that is so depleted. Those guys, to me,
defense that has lost 4 of its 5 top linebackers.
Exactly.
And now you're asking your best linebacker.
I'd be okay with it. I would be okay with it. Is what I'm saying. I would not.
I mean, therein lies the difference. Therein lies the difference. I am not going to coach and I'm not going to play scared. I'm not going to do that.
I don't think it's scared.
Okay? I
think it's. I
know there's the difference. I think it's a scared mentality. I don't want to get hurt. I'm too worried about losing this guy when that's what sports is all about and that's what football is all about. He could have got hurt last week or the week before. All those things. Those are the things that are it's bound to happen to a certain extent. You want to take the 2 best players off your defense, and you could argue they are the 2 best players, right? Off your defense and put other guys out there who have not had the reps, who aren't as familiar, who aren't as good. Tell me the message it sends to the rest of your team. You have a team to think about. You don't have just individuals to think about. You have a locker room that you have to make sure is staying in line with the way it has been all season long, and really the way it's been the last 3 seasons. And now what you're going to do after saying during the week, let me just stop you right there. This is what Dan Campbell said. Let me stop you right there. We're going out there to play and to win. What does that say to the rest of your locker room?
Well, so that's another thing, Shep, is we're kind of having this discussion knowing what's going to happen. I mean, Dan Campbell, if he holds his word, has come out and said he's playing everybody. So everyone's going to play tonight. I'm trying to get ahead of the hindsight 2020 thinking. If someone is to get hurt tonight, I am going to lose my mind because it's like I'm trying to get out in front of this right now. This game means nothing. I say that in standing only. Obviously, I know what you're saying with, it means something to every single player, every single game.
It does. But you say that as like a cursory or a second thought to it. It does mean something to everybody.
What I'm saying, Shepard,
the constant mindset of that it doesn't mean anything only in standing is bullcrap. It's absolute bullcrap because players talk to players for crying out loud, and they will tell you they want rhythm. They want plays. They feel the need to be part of it.
So that's where I'll draw the line, and I'll just say if a player taps out tonight and says they want out, even after a half, we could see some of that too, right?
I've already said
maybe
that.
Yeah.
If a player says it, it's different. If you're a coach, you're not going into it saying I'm resting. Let's say forget Campbell and Branch. What if every offensive lineman, you rested every offensive lineman? What does that do for Jahmyr Gibbs? What does it do for Jared Goff? What does it do for Amon-Ra St. Brown or Jameson Williams or Sam Laporta? Tell me how that works.
I get the point you're making, but
then if you're not resting them, let's say you just say, okay, I'm going to rest Frank Ragnow. I'm going to rest Taylor Decker. What's that message to Penei Sewell and Graham Glasgow if he plays, and Kevin Zeitler? Look, legitimately, if you're Dan Campbell, you could rest Decker, Ragnow, and Zeitler with good reasoning. You could. All three of those guys, they're veterans. They've been beat up in the past. They played a lot of snaps this year, right? Ragnow more than the other two, I believe. So you could easily do that, right? What does that tell Penei Sewell and Graham Glasgow? And what does that mean if you're Jahmyr Gibbs and you're playing, unless you want to rest him too? And tell me the starters you're not going to rest. Maybe that's the easier way to answer the question because it doesn't mean anything to you. Tell me who you rest and who you don't rest on the offensive side of the football.
Yeah, Shep, this is where I agree with you. There's no right answer to this. It's just if you already know, because this is a unique situation. You're playing next Monday night, or you're playing on Monday night, and you know what's at stake next week because of what happened yesterday. It's okay, Dan Campbell, to tweak what you said a little bit. Just
all I'm asking you, all that is already understood. We've already talked about that. I'm asking you for names. You're using it as a generic.
No, but Shep,
you're saying this game doesn't mean anything. You should rest. Give me the guys you're going to rest.
The guys who want to rest. That's the answer. I don't know, Shep. I haven't talked to the guys.
Well,
that's
my point.
Taylor Decker
said if a player comes up, I started this whole conversation. If a player comes up to me and says, I could use this day off to help to heal, I get it. All right. My point was, if you're a coach, you said it doesn't mean anything. So why would you play Campbell and Branch? I asked you about the offensive side of the ball. All I'm asking you, if you're a coach, who are you resting? If it's not the guys, because that wasn't your stance at the beginning. Your stance at the beginning was it doesn't mean anything. You shouldn't play certain guys. Give me the guys.
Taylor Decker, because he's been hurt for a few games. Okay. I probably wouldn't play Brian Branch. He's been a little injury prone. I shouldn't say that, but he's missed games over his young career, especially with how depleted that defense is. On offense, I'm going to sound crazy. I wouldn't play Jahmyr Gibbs. There's no reason to. He's all you've got back there right now. You're going to need him next week. Next week is a must-win. We understand that. If the game either way is more than a 2-score game at halftime, I'd pull Jared Goff. I'd throw Hendon Hooker out there.
That's at the half. We were talking about going into the game. So you wouldn't play Decker. I get it. Dan Skipper could play, and he's played pretty well since he's been there. Right. You wouldn't play Gibbs. Okay. I understand that. I have no problem with that. I've asked for names. That's all. I get the philosophy. I don't agree with the philosophy, but I understand the philosophy from a lot of people. And that's why my follow-up has always been who? You mentioned 2 guys on offense and 1 guy, if you want to throw Campbell in there, 2 guys on defense. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're talking about those 4 guys.
Just a couple key players, Shep. A couple key players that are going to have to make key plays for you next week in a must-win game for the 1 seed.
Right. And if you're the head coach, just out of curiosity here, what if more guys keep coming up to you? Like, what if Zeitler says something? What if Ragnow says something?
Every guy that wants to sit out and be ready for war next week, I would let him sit out.
What do you say to Penei Sewell?
Well,
Penei Sewell's going to be at the right tackle. He's a guy who says, hey, wait a minute. Well, here's what you're forgetting. A lot of these young guys, they're not comfortable going to their head coach and saying, I want a day off.
Then they won't do it.
Okay. So I think it's easy for us to go, it just doesn't mean anything. I would rest as many as possible or rest guys. And I think it goes against the grain of everything about what sports is about.
And it's much easier said than done. I completely agree with you there. What I'm saying, Shep, this team has lost 2 games all year, and somehow in this crazy league that we love that is called the NFL, it's all culminating to next week on Sunday Night Football. We
all know that.
Yes, exactly. So it can be a situational case-by-case basis because that's what you're dealing with right now. And how banged up your team is. You got the most injuries in the league and somehow you're still the best. I am okay with resting a couple players tonight. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it.
I've said that. I've said if the player comes to you, that's one thing. But just as a coach to come out there and say, I'm resting these guys, I don't think it sits well with everybody else. All right. And I just cringe every time I hear it means nothing. And it drives me crazy when people say that. Because we're the ones who are sitting back in our chairs, drinking a beer, grabbing some chips, and saying, this is what I would do when you're not there competing with your guys and expecting and asking your guys to give it everything they've got. And then suddenly you're going to peel it back. I think that's a dangerous way to go about things in sports. Phone number on the Meyer hotline, 866-838-4843. You can text the program Sports Radio to 21,000. Tigers have themselves a new second baseman. What do you think about that? That's coming up next.
Saturday, December 28th at Soaring Eagle Casino.
Second hour of the program. Welcome back. X's and Bros Monday through Friday, 6 until 9 throughout the great state of Michigan. Glad you're with us. Some big news taking place on Friday for Detroit baseball fans. We'll get to that here coming up. By the way, there's one player in the history of the National Football League, one, who has recorded at least 14 sacks, 4 straight years. Do you know who that player is? One player.
Michael Strahan?
To record 14 or more sacks in 4 straight seasons. Michael Strahan would be a really good guess. That is incorrect.
Is it TJ Watt?
That's another really good guess. That was my first guess. That is incorrect. I'll give you one more guess.
JJ Watt, his brother.
Nope. It is Myles Garrett.
Wow.
Myles Garrett had 2 sacks in the loss to Miami, in a 20-3 loss to Miami, and that gives him 14 for the year. The thing I love about a lot of these accomplishments, Saquon Barkley, who I really liked him a lot at Penn State, like him even more as a pro, just the way he handles himself, and Myles Garrett. That's one of the beauties, I think, of what Hard Knocks has brought, quite honestly. We love the insight, but it's a little bit of a window into players you may not know that much about. The only time you see them perhaps might be on a commercial or on a post-game interview or a pre-game interview during the week. This
any chance to pull the curtain
look
back
at who they are and, you know, the kind of person that they are to a certain extent. And I love the fact that these guys have done it in a 16-game season. Now, with Barkley, I would tell you this. With Barkley, he's an amazing player. He deserves to be in the conversation. Deserves to be in this conversation for MVP. I personally, I don't think he is, but he is. I sure wouldn't be crying and complaining if he won the trophy. You can make the case for Burrow. You can make the case for Allen. You can make the case for Lamar Jackson too. And I know there are Detroiters who think you can make the case for Jared Goff. And you know what? I don't think you're that far off. I don't know if he's as important as some of these other guys. But let me just remind you of this. So Barkley's going to go for the record next week, you would think, okay, for Philadelphia, even though there's nothing to play for there, right? It's a meaningless game because they've already got the 2 seed. They're not getting the 1 seed, all right? That's between Minnesota and Detroit, and that's Sunday Night Football. That they did announce that last night. It's going to be Sunday Night Football. Anyway, so you look at what Barkley's done. It's amazing. Jim Brown, just so you know, Jim Brown in 1963 rushed for 1,863 yards in 14 games. 14 games. He averaged 133 yards per game in that game. 2 fewer games than Barkley. Barkley's got 2,000, but Jim Brown, you don't think he would have gotten 2,000 yards if he had 2 more games? 2 fewer games, 80 fewer carries, 80, and a much higher yards per game and yards per carry. Dickerson did it. Eric Dickerson, the record, right? O.J. Simpson. How about O.J. Simpson? 1973, 2,003 yards in 14 games. Nothing against Saquon Barkley, nothing against Eric Dickerson, nothing against Chris Johnson or Derrick Henry or Barry Sanders, guys who have done it. But O.J. Simpson in 1973 did this in 14 games, folks. That is crazy. What Saquon Barkley has done, 2,005 yards, what he has done, and it's taken him 16 games to do it, all credit to Saquon Barkley. All right? O.J. Simpson in 1973 did it in 2 fewer games. That, to me, I mean, that tells you just how good he was. And with Barkley, he had 300. He's got 345 carries. O.J. Simpson did his in 2 fewer games and with about 13 fewer touches.
Yeah, Shep, it reminds me a little bit of last season when Tyreek Hill was on pace to break Calvin Johnson's single season record And all that kept going through my mind as a Lions fan, I was like, well, Calvin did it in a 16-game season. It has to be brought up. You can't penalize the new players for playing in a 17-game season, but when you're talking about
taking
records
away from them, no, you're just putting it in perspective. That's
it has to be brought up.
Okay?
Yes.
We do this in every sport. We're not saying that Simpson is better than Barkley, although I think he is. We're not saying that Dickerson's better than Barkley, although I think he is. We're saying what those guys did. Actually, we're giving those guys just a ton of credit.
We're more impressed.
A lot of times you forget about just how good a player is or how special a season has been for that player. You may years down the road, when I'm dead and gone and you're still talking about this stuff, you're going to be able to bring up Barkley's conversation when Roger Goodell is still the commissioner and they're playing 20 regular season games instead of 16, 17, soon to be 18. And it's always about the players. I just wanted to bring that up and give you that little context there. Myles Garrett has done it, 4 consecutive seasons of 14 sacks or more. He's done it in a 16-game schedule. Okay, good for them. And Saquon Barkley has been able to do it in a 16-game schedule as well. So just a little levity there, a little history, little opportunity there for you to be able to have a conversation.
By the way, Shep, just quickly, that speaks also huge volumes about Myles Garrett's durability. Yes. I mean, good for him. That's incredible. At that position, to be that productive for that long, that amount of time without getting hurt or anything like that, that's awesome. He's a record.
Yeah, at that position, and if you look at him in uniform, he is an absolute specimen, the way he is built. Completely yoked. All right, let's get to what took place on Friday. We were off the air when this took place. The Tigers signed Gleyber Torres to a 1-year, $15 million contract. Second free agent that they have signed in the offseason. The other, Alex Cobb, on a 1-year, $15 million contract. Can't say that I am in love with both or either signing, but at least it's only a 1-year deal. People want to know about the pop from the right side. This is something I've said for years now. Detroit needs more thump in the middle of their order. Gleyber Torres will bat in the middle of their order. What kind of thump are you getting from him as a right-handed? If you want to call him a power hitter, I wouldn't call him a power hitter. What is the whole point of signing a guy like Gleyber Torres? Well, obviously, with what Scott Harris has said about his situation right now, is that there's a need here for a second baseman. And maybe it's more as a first baseman. Torres is going to play second base, which, hurts you defensively. And they're going to move Colt Keith to first base, which hurts you defensively. I mean, those are the facts. I mean, anything other than people trying to argue anything other than that.
I don't know if we know that about Colt Keith yet. I get Colt
Keith, who came up as a shortstop, tried at third base, didn't work out, moved to second base, was a -8 defensive run save, one of the worst in baseball. And now you're going to ask him to bring a brand new position that is a lot more difficult than people actually think it is, because you're outside of the pitcher and the catcher, you handle the ball more than anybody else.
I don't want to sell him short. Okay. I'm just saying
you don't have to sell him short.
He's got a whole offseason to work at the position.
Whole offseason. How long did he have at second base? He had more than an offseason. How did he go? Okay. Come on. Let's be real here. Be honest.
I am being honest. Okay.
Honest because
I am.
He's a guy who's never played the position, and you're not going to sell him short.
Because you're saying moving him to first base is going to make you way worse defensively. I don't agree with that.
There's no doubt about that. It's going to make you worse defensively. There's no doubt. Okay? Never played the position. Gleyber Torres was a -11. Only one guy was worse, Jose Altuve. The right side of your defense stinks. But offensively, you should improve. You should. Torres had 15 homers last year. 15. I don't care that he hit 250, right? On base percentage, 330. A guy who has a tendency to strike out a lot, punched out 138 times last year in 154 games. It's a 1-year deal. Fine. But defensively, you're going to be bad. He swings and misses a lot, just like Javier Baez swung and missed a lot. If Baez is at short, Torres is at second, Keith is at first, it's going to be a really sad state of affairs defensively for your team. I said last year, this team really good off defensively in the outfield. They've got to get better defensively on the infield. They got a lot worse with this sign. We're back after this.
Saturday, December 28th at Soaring Eagle Casino.
Welcome back. The bottom line is the Tigers have acquired Gleyber Torres for his offense, not for his defense. Okay? Guy's a minus 11 last year, defensive run saves in defensive play. All right? This guy is, he's not going to be playing shortstop for you, even though he has played that before as well. And when he did play shortstop, a little over 2,000 innings there, he was a minus 25 defensive runs saved. So you're not putting him at shortstop. He is there to play second base, and he's there to give you power. Now, if you're banking on him hitting 25 home runs, I think that's fair to do, considering he had 25 homers 2 years ago. And in his career, I don't think he's going to be hitting 38 homers again, but in his career, he averages 25 homers a year. So you would take that, right? It doesn't solve all your issues, but you would take that. Cole Keith's moved to first base. The director of player development, Ryan Garco and Scott Harris, and all those guys know what they're doing, I think. And if they feel like Cole Keith can make that transition, good for him. And I hope he can do that. I want to know where the power is going to come from, unless you feel like you're in the midst for Alex Bregman, which is possible. Okay. You're still in the discussion for Alex Bregman. In fact, I read an article, I think it was CBS Sports over the weekend, that listed the 10 teams that are still in the mix for Alex Bregman. Now, they have Houston at number 10, which I don't think is possible any longer, considering what they've done. They made a bid for Nolan Arenado. He blocked that trade. They traded for Isaac Paredes. He's going to be the third baseman. Dana Brown, their general manager, has come out and stated as much. They've got Seattle in there. They've got the Yankees in there. They've got the Phillies. Remember, there are reports that Alec Bohm is on the trading block. They've got the Angels in there, which would make a lot of sense, I think. Toronto, Boston for sure. They got Boston at 4. I would think Boston a little bit higher in that regard. They've got the Cubs at 3. They've got the Mets at 2. And they have the Tigers at number 1 as the destination site for Alex Bregman. We all know the big reason for that is the link to A.J. Hinch. Here's what they write. It's not just the Yankees or the Dodgers. There are decent numbers of fan bases who want nothing to do with the 2017 Astros. The Tigers fan base, though, is strongly behind manager A.J. Hinch, and he was the manager of the Astros in 17. He was the man in charge of the on-field when Bregman came up and adapted to the majors on through his best season in 2019. A reunion here makes a decent story. Further, the Tigers hardly have any salary on the books moving forward. It's only Javier Baez's disastrous deal through 2027 and Cole Keith's incredibly club-friendly contract. They have the financial wherewithal anyway. That's a good time to be flexing some of those muscles now after a late, awesome season run. That's fine. And it continues, and it talks about some of the other things. That's great. That's not even the point, though. The point is whether or not the owner is going to pay for that. It's not whether or not he fits. He fits in a lot of places. It's not whether or not Detroit could use a guy like that. For sure they could. The question is, are you going to meet what is viewed to be his demands, which was 6 years, $200 million, which is probably, and we said this last week, probably going down. When the market, when you look at the market, he and his agency, Scott BrO's, has to reveal to themselves what the market is looking like right now. We are, 45 days or so away from spring training. Are they really going to stand and die on that hill of 6 years, $200 million when there has been lukewarm, if at all, types of feelings on Alex Bregman associated with that type of deal? At least from what the reports are, we're not there talking with teams like his agency is, but let's face it, there's not a lot of teams knocking right now. A lot of guys have signed. Alex Bregman remains a free agent right now. When you recognize that, it's not too dissimilar to what Gleyber Torres has recognized. He actually wanted the one-year deal. This is a prove to everybody type deal for Gleyber Torres. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to show everybody I believe in myself. I'm going to bet on myself, and I'm going to get a long-term deal out of this. You're Alex Bregman. You're looking around and you're going, wait a minute. I thought the market might be a little bit stronger for me at this stage, considering what I have accomplished, what I have done. I would think more teams would want my services. It's not there. So perhaps you have to peel back a little bit and go, not that he's going to take a 1-year deal, but maybe he takes a lesser deal for still a lot of money. It'd be a lot of money to any of us, right? But instead of a 6-year deal, maybe it's more of a 4-year deal. And he still gets the $27 million a year contract that he wants. Would you look at it and say, okay, 4 years, $120 million if you were the Tigers? I'm just using those numbers as a possibility here. I wouldn't want to. I said this when he was out there and people were all like, oh, this is where he should be going. The Tigers should get involved in this. No, this is why you play the slow game a little bit. The long game is because you don't have to bend to his demands. The need or the desire of other teams is not out there for him. So maybe now you've become a little bit better situated in the driver's seat. You get to go on your terms. You didn't want a 6-year contract. I don't know why you would. As much as you like a guy like Alex Bregman, you like the attitude, you like the leadership to a certain extent, right? You like the defense overall. The offense has been, especially the power numbers, have not been what they were used to, and that happens. You know, he's 30 years old. So you didn't want to be tied down to a 6-year contract. Okay. 4 years, $120 million. That's a little bit more palatable, don't you think? I do. He gets what he wants. Now, he wanted the $200 million deal, but he gets the $30 million a year. Big deal, right? And you get him for that smaller window, that shorter window. Just an idea. Maybe it's not 120. Maybe it's not a $30 million a year. Maybe it's 27 million, whatever the case may be. But would you sign him to a 4-year contract for some money that is a little bit more amenable to him? That to me is a little bit more. I could swallow that a little bit easier than I could a 6-year contract. I'd prefer a 3, but if you had to have the 4th, let's say it's a player option for a 4th. I'd prefer a club option, but let's say it's a player option. Those are the possibilities. And at least Detroit is still in the mix for that, surprisingly to me, because I didn't think they'd be in the mix. Now, I was using the preface by 6 years, $200 million. No way was Detroit going to be involved in something like that. And I still would be concerned a little bit when you're dealing with other teams like the Red Sox, for example, like the Mets, for the example, and like Toronto. Those teams are more apt to give him, I think, his number than Detroit. But if I could get him on a 3-year deal, maybe even a 4-year deal for something, as I mentioned before, then it's a little bit more, it's easier for me to understand where they're going with it. And that might help you a little bit, because right now you're going to need some help. You need a third baseman who's going to help your shortstop defensively. And you know damn well on the right side of your defense, the defense isn't there. Phone number on the Meyer hotline, 866-838-4843. This hour of X's and Bros is brought to you by Meyer. When we come back, don't forget, 8 o'clock, we want your hero and heels from the weekend. Part of this discussion with the Tigers also is about the first baseman, or the guy who now has to take a secondary role. We'll discuss that when we return on X's and Bros right after that.
Make your New Year's Eve celebration and football watch party a good deal better with Meyer. Fresh guac is always a hit. Mix up a batch with extra large fresh avocados. Now buy one, get one free. And Meyer tortilla chips are a perfect match. Assorted Meyer chips are 3 for $6 when you buy 3 or more. And Coca-Cola and Pepsi 12-packs are buy 2, get 1 free. Plus deposit where applicable. Bring more good to your holiday celebrations at Meyer. Exclusions apply. See the Meyer app for details.
Huge here for the Michigan High School Athletic Association.
And to be able to do that, I wouldn't be able to do that with the O-line, the wide receivers, and the tight end. But at the end of the day, the most important thing was to get a win, clinch the division, and Kenny Pickett came up big for us, and Tanner came in and made some big plays. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, my name would be the one that goes across with 2,000. But like I said, you can't do it with those guys, and that's something that we said from the beginning. We want to do something special, and they did all the work. I just followed them, and they made me look a lot better.
How common is at the end of the day that phrase now? I mean, it's constant. It's used by everybody. Saquon Barkley, 31 carries, 167 yards, did not score a touchdown, but 167 yards means he has over 2,000 on the year, 9th player in history to reach the 2,000-yard mark. And this is one of the many things I love about Saquon Barkley, how he gave love to the offensive line. They were as happy as he was. And that's the thing that people have to remember too, when it comes to these accomplishments, that it's not done by themselves. What did he do quickly? This is what great leaders do. I mean, they give a lot of credit to everybody else. He gives credit to Kenny Pickett, who was pretty good. I mean, he was 10 of 16, 143 yards and a touchdown, looked pretty sharp. He gives credit to the offensive line. And now you can't help but wonder. I mean, this is what, a week, right? A week after Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley gave every offensive lineman golf carts.
Yeah.
Which was pretty cool. It's not exactly what Brock Purdy did for his O-line, but it's still pretty awesome. Names, numbers on the side. Love it. Somebody else did that last year. One of the quarterbacks did that. I forget who it was. I don't know if it was Dak Prescott or who, but somebody else did that for their offensive line. Anyway, I love that Saquon Barkley is spreading the love, right? And that he wants to make sure his offensive line is getting the proper recognition. It's not as simple as him, I'm just following them. No, he's a pretty special player. But the offensive line deserves an awful lot of credit. And now, could you help but wonder if Saquon Barkley wants to break Eric Dickerson's record that was set back in 1985, I believe. Maybe it was 84, but it was right. And they played home against the Giants. And he needs 101 yards.
His old team.
Would you play him to get that record?
I would literally leave this up to him. If you want to play, if you want to try to go for it, great. If not, this is another situation. It
doesn't mean anything.
They can't move anywhere.
Right.
They can't move up. They can't move down. Right. So I would ask.
They're locked into the 2 seed right now. The 1 seed's either Minnesota or Detroit. So what exactly are you accomplishing there?
If I was Nick Sirianni, I'd walk up to him and ask.
But his offensive line, it means as much, if not more, to his offensive line than it would be Saquon Barkley. And this is not one of those things where, look, the next touchdown catch or the next pass, you set a record. It's going to take some time for you to get that record, you would think. Now, the Giants are pretty susceptible to it. He had a big day against the Giants earlier this year, so perhaps it won't take him quite as long. When he played the Giants earlier this year, Saquon Barkley rushed for 170 yards or something like that. Let me think about that. Hold on a second. He rushed for 176 yards against them. So it may not take you much to get there, but it's probably going to take you a quarter and a half, or at least a half of football. In that time, you could easily get hurt. I'm talking about this is what we were talking about earlier regarding the Lions. All right. If it doesn't mean anything, what exactly are you trying? Is it an individual sport? No, it's a team sport. Should you be ready for the playoffs? Yes, you should. So this is why I say consistency.
This is different. It's so different. It's not. You're not playing because you're not playing for the 1 seed. Your team isn't depleted. This is for a record with Saquon. It's literally just for a record. If you want it, that is an individual award. If you want it, go for it. If you want to get that.
Hold on. You said your team isn't depleted. Lions, when we were talking earlier, we weren't just talking about the defense. We were talking about the offense. Is the offense depleted? No. Am I missing something on the Lions? Okay.
No.
So, okay. Well,
I think this is so different. The situation with Saquon Barkley is so different than the Lions situation.
I think it's about competing personally. Well, the only reason we agree on anything is that I would leave it up to the players, not just him. You bring Saquon Barkley and your offensive line in. Hey, how important is this to us? Do we want to risk injury for this? Do we think it's important enough to do this, and so on and so forth?
So then what's wrong with Dan Campbell doing that with the team tonight?
I never said that. No. I never said that. I said Dan Campbell. I said it's about competing. I asked you who. Okay? I said Dan Campbell. That's what I would do. I would talk to the player. If a player came to me, that's what I said. If a player came to me and I used Taylor Decker as an example, if a player came to me, then I would do it. But if not, I wouldn't do it. That was the difference. You said it didn't matter, and you would rest as many starters as you could. And then you said specifically Campbell, Branch, okay? And my point was 2 years into the league, you're going to go to your coach and you're going to say, I want out. You're going to go to veterans who've played through a lot of injuries and say, I want out. Be careful there. That's all I said. I never said anything about how it's different for Dan Campbell. If a player came to Dan Campbell, a veteran player came to Dan Campbell and said, I could use this week, I think Dan Campbell would listen. And I would listen too if I were head coach. So therein lies the difference. Anyway, we got Hero and Heels coming up at 8:18. It's great stuff from Saquon Barkley. I think he's a phenomenal player. He deserves to be in the playoff or in the MVP conversation. What's interesting over the weekend, you notice like the Rams clinched because they needed some help, strength of schedule. They needed some help with Washington. They got it. They needed some help with a couple of other teams, and they got it. Last year, the playoffs looked like this in the AFC. Buffalo, Baltimore, Houston, Kansas City, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and Miami. All right? This year, Buffalo, the same. Baltimore, the same. Pittsburgh, the same. Houston, the same. Kansas City, the same. It's the Chargers and team we don't know yet. Could be Denver, could be Cincinnati. So two teams from last year didn't make it, Cleveland and Miami. And two new teams are going to make it this year, the Chargers, and we're not sure yet. Okay? In the NFC, the consistents. Philadelphia, they were in it last year. Detroit, Green Bay, and the Rams. Last year, it was Dallas who was in, but not in this year. And San Francisco, who was in last year and not in this year. We're not sure about the NFC South yet. Tampa leads by a game, but they haven't clinched.
Wouldn't it be nice to be in that division, by the way?
Yes, that would be. That would see. I think it'd be nice to be in the AFC South. Like, you watch Houston. I was thinking about this the other day when Houston got steamrolled at home by Kansas City. There's a couple things that went through my mind. A, how many people are giving the Chiefs a lot of credit? I'm not a Chiefs fan. I like Andy Reid a lot, and I like Patrick Mahomes a lot. I think they're both excellent at what they do. But I think a lot of people dislike the Chiefs because they feel like they get some help from the referees. I'm not saying they don't. I think they've had enough Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid.
They're annoying. Yeah.
More Mahomes because of the number of commercials he does.
Exactly.
But he, and they get tired of watching him with his four fingers, bringing the next. But I mean, that's a habit. He's excellent. He's unbelievable. I'm watching them beat the crap out of Houston. I'm thinking, how good are the Texans? Beginning of the year, or before the season started, the two in vogue picks to reach the Super Bowl were the Lions and the Texans. People wanted to go off the reservation a little bit and say, you know what, this is who I think is. Well, let me pick somebody other than the Chiefs. The Chiefs are too obvious.
They were the shiny new toy, though.
Houston is the team that was going to go make that next leap, right? We always think it's linear. They're going to make the next leap. How are they right now? They're winning a bad division. They don't look very good at all. And they are a team that should be very susceptible to losing early in the playoffs. But in the NFC, the two new teams are Washington, who clinched last night with a win over Atlanta, and Minnesota, who won against Green Bay to get to 14-2 and continues to really impress. The more you watch Minnesota and their defense, really good at takeaways. Their defense stout. Tom Brady said it during the broadcast. It was a really good broadcast. I think Minnesota is a really scary team. It's amazing to me. You're going to have 2 14-2. You have two. I assume Detroit's going to win tonight. 2 14-2 teams. One of these teams is going to be a wild card, and yet the Rams are going to win their division. They're going to have home field advantage. Tampa perhaps will win their division. They'll have a home field game. Whichever visiting team, whether it be Minnesota's a wild card, Detroit is a wild card, wherever they have to play, there's your roadkill for that first playoff game, right? You feel good about Detroit or Minnesota going to either Tampa or LA, I would guess. At least I do. Because I think they've proven it, and they're really, really good on both sides of the football. Those are some of the things that I was thinking about yesterday. I also thinking about this yesterday after we didn't really get a chance to talk much about it on Thursday, even though it was a big story then. And that is college basketball loses another, he's not a legend, but a well-respected head coach in Jim Larrañaga. He of Miami, where he got his team to a Final Four in 2023 and was arguably, if not the best, one of the best coaches that school's ever had. In 14 seasons, 274 wins and 174 losses. The reason he leaves, and the reason Tony Bennett left, and a big reason one would guess that Nick Saban left, and other coaches are eyeing a desire to probably get the hell out of college coaching, is this quote. This is what Jim Larrañaga said on Thursday. After we went to the 2023 Final Four, 8 players, this is not a handful, this is not 1, 2, 3, 8 players of his, what do they have? How many scholarships they have? 14? 8 players wanted to transfer to seek better NIL deals. He said they came into his office and they said to him, "We love it here at Miami. We love playing for you, but we want a better deal." They want a better chance to make more money. And having this discussion over the weekend with some friends, I heard more and more people tell me, I don't like college sports anymore. And I wonder how many other people feel that way. That it is, there are certain things that bother us about certain players, teams, owners, general managers, leagues, whatever, right? That's to each his own. What bothers me may not bother you, and that's fine. But I think as a whole, what people loved most about college athletics, rightly or wrongly, was the belief that it was all for the school, right? It was, I'm an alma mater of Michigan State, and she's playing for the same school that I attended. They're going to similar classes that I went to. They are playing for the colors, green and white. They're playing for our logo. They're doing I see them on campus. They have the same interests I have. I remember calling Michigan basketball and seeing Denard Robinson come to basketball games. It's the beauty of what college athletics is supposed to be all about, right? It is no longer that feel. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's no longer that feel of you're the college athlete. You've got 4 years or however long. You're going to embrace your school's brand, their motto, their fight song, their student body, their alumni, all the things associated with that school that you and I had in common is now gone. And people, more and more fans who I talk to are borderline disgusted with what is taking place in college athletics. Somebody told me this over the weekend. The Tulane quarterback is transferring to Duke. he is going there. I believe it's 2 years for $8 million, $8.5 million. He's going to get the largest. He's going to make over $4 million per year at Duke. And he's going to be it's the highest single year NIL deal in history. And I couldn't help but wonder how many other kids are looking at that bottom line, looking at that deal, thinking to themselves, I want to be the guy to break that record. While you're looking at various scoring records, rebounding records, passing records, rushing records, whatever the case may be, what that used to spur a lot of people on, right? Now, I think more and more are going to look at NIL deals and say, I'm going to get this acknowledgement from NIL. And it's not too dissimilar from what we've seen at the professional level, whether it be, Chuck Daly saying, I got to make $1 more than Pat Riley on than during that time for expenses or per diem or whatever the case may be, or for clothes or whatever, to a player saying, you know what, I want to break that record. I want to be the highest paid quarterback in the National Football League. Some guys have that incentive, right? I think you're going to see more and more college athletes have that type of incentive. It has been a turnoff for fans when it first started, but they probably didn't think it would go this far. It has gotten to that point now, and I think more and more fans are going to start turning their backs a little bit more on college athletics. I'm not saying they're not going to fill stadiums. Michigan's still going to get over 100,000 every single Saturday. I'm not saying they're not going to attend the NCAA tournament. That is still going to take place. But there's plenty of things that you do that you may not necessarily like, people you may support that you may not necessarily like, whether it be a musician, a politician, an actor, or an athlete. I don't like that guy, but I want to go see the game. Right?
And that's the problem, Shep. That's where I'm a little more pessimistic, because as long as the fans and the consumers continue to pay to go see the games and provide that revenue, nothing's going to change. We'll see. But I'm less optimistic that things are going to change. I'm with you.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's going to get worse.
It's sad. Yeah. We're just getting started here.
It's going to get changed. I think it's going to change for the worst.
We're just getting started.
Yeah, I think I'd be interested to know, when you talk to your buddies, 25, 26-year-olds, how do they feel? This is not a situation where it's an ex-athlete who's saying, I didn't come along at the right time. I didn't make the big money. My timing was off, right? This is students who went to a school, have great pride in that school, have great pride in their programs, that are now seeing a lot of kids going there for what they would consider the wrong reasons. And now you're going to see more and more. You want to call it pressure, go right ahead. But the expectations have been amped up big time because a lot of this stuff. Like, Duke better win. This kid better have a hell of a year because of the record he just set. He can be happy that he signed the dotted line, but there's a lot that comes with it. When we come back, we'll get to the poll question from Friday. We will get to our daily wager. And at 8:18, we've got Hero and Heel coming up on X's and BrO's.
Hey, Michigan, let's go big.
back and see me. Get some facts and come back and see me. Don't throw out salaries or other things. Get some facts and come back and see me.
You can't handle the truth.
I told our players, you need to be more like a dog. We don't need a bunch of cats in here. Yeah, looking in the mirror. Do I look good? I got my extra bands on. I got my other shoes on. Be a dog. We don't need no meows. We don't need no cats. We need more dogs.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
We weren't good. There's no sense asking me things about the game. I'm telling you, we laid an egg, so I'm not going to break it down for you. We sucked. We sucked. We laid an egg. That's all I have to say, guys. I'm sorry. I'm not going to break it down for you. Nothing went well for us. It's on us. We have to figure it out, and we will.
It's showtime.
Or the program, glad you're with us on this Monday. New Year's right around the corner. Amazing how quickly things go. Our phone number on the Wire Hotline, 866-838-4843. This hour of our show brought to you by our friends at Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort. You can text the program Sports Radio to 21,000. Thanks for listening on our great affiliates. I want to say thank you to all of them for their support all season long, especially those in Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo, Holland, listening on WMAX 96.1 FM, The Game. Our friendships in Lansing on WVFN AM 730, The Score. Great to have them. In Traverse City, WKAD 93.7 FM, The Ticket. In Petoskey and Charlevoix, WMBN 104.7 FM, The Ticket. Northern Michigan. And, of course, in Cadillac, WKAD, The Ticket 93.7 FM. Some of the things that we've done for you this year. We hope you've enjoyed it. We've been able to come to you live on the web as well. And we do that on Facebook, and you can do that by following us at X's and BrO's. We are live on X at XB Mornings, and we are live on YouTube at X's and BrO's as well. Lions close out week 17 with a kick in San Francisco tonight. Detroit trying to finish the year undefeated on the road and stay on top in the NFC, knowing that Minnesota beat Green Bay 27-25 last night. Sam Darnold throws for a career-best 377 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now has 35 passing touchdowns. That is 4th most in history for a player playing on a team in his first season. Minnesota's 14-2. They will clash with Detroit Sunday Night Football next weekend for bragging rights in the NFC. Whoever wins that game will have the number 1 seed, no matter how Detroit does against San Francisco tonight. Does Sam Darnold's performance, they needed it, right? It was a big game for them.
He played very well. Yep.
Does it change anybody's mind, do you think? I mean, he was, people were screaming at the top of their lungs for him and how good he was. And know this, a lot of people, we've talked about this. We would say, I think you and I could come to this agreement. Anybody would come to this agreement that Justin Jefferson is a top 2 wide receiver.
2 at worst.
The only other player who would be in that conversation is Jamar Chase, right?
Correct.
Okay. I think that's fair to say. Well, Justin Jefferson had 8 catches. He was targeted 11 times, but in the first half, I think it was 4 or 5. It was primarily the second half. So that first half, where Minnesota jumped out to a big lead, it was not Justin Jefferson, although he did finish with most receiving yards for the Vikings and most catches for the Vikings. He's a phenomenal player. But I think it does show you that, 2 guys working in concert with one another is what takes place, is what really is the most important thing. Now, Darnold had to throw it a lot. He threw it 43 times, right, in order for him to get those yards and for them to get the points. And I think perhaps it shows you, as I'm watching that game a little bit last night, it shows you that there are different ways to win games for different teams. I think Aaron Jones is a really good player. He only had 12 carries. Minnesota, I think, has really good balance. They only rushed it 26 times. They ran 70 plays, only rushed it 26 times. So threw it a lot. I wonder how Lions fans would feel if Detroit was doing something similar. Detroit's got a better running game. There's no doubt about that. I mean, I think Detroit's got the best offensive line in football. So I don't know if it's necessarily apples to apples. But then if that's the case, it almost speaks more volume on how good Sam Darnold has been this year, doesn't it? If they don't have the running game or the offensive line that the Lions have, they don't have that luxury, it's going to require more on that quarterback. Yes?
Yep,
I mean, that's
for
logic,
sure.
right?
But could I argue, Shep, that having the O-line that the Lions have, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but the O-line the Lions have could equate to having the best wide receiver in football in Justin Jefferson. Like, is that apples to apples or no?
No, I think it's one guy against five, but I think what you're saying is it makes up
having
for
that luxury.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very fair point. I suppose I could always come back and say, and both teams have really good tight ends, right? I'd take either one of them. I like Laporta more because I think he's a better blocker, but you'd take either one of them. Amon-Ra St. Brown has had an unbelievable season, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Love the guy.
I'm not saying he's Justin Jefferson. I'm not saying he's Jamar Chase. I'm not even going to say he's CeeDee Lamb. Amon-Ra St. Brown's in the conversation for among the best top 8 wide receivers in football.
And he's your best skill position player on the team, point blank. He just is. He's rock solid. Got the best hands. You could argue he's got the best hands in football. He's a very smart player.
I don't know
he doesn't
about
drop
that.
the ball.
Yeah,
he's got 100 catches this year.
Hands. Yeah. Yes. Look, if you just wanted to argue, I think Jahmyr Gibbs is a really special player. Okay. Jahmyr Gibbs' ability to run and catch,
skill set for sure.
From that standpoint and his speed, for me, he would be the other guy. I'm not saying you're wrong, but he would be the other guy.
Well, that's fair.
To say that, he's your best skill player, hands down. I don't know if I'd go that far because I love what Jahmyr Gibbs brings to this offense. Just because he shares time with David Montgomery doesn't mean he isn't as skilled or as important. Amon-Ra St. Brown's got to share time with, other wide receivers and other pass catchers. Sam Laporta, obviously, Jameson Williams. But it's a really interesting conversation. And it's a good one, too. It's a fun one to have. Minnesota just, I hope Detroit throttles them next Sunday night because I'm tired of hearing about how nobody respects us. You get plenty of respect, all right? You're 14-2. They're talking about what an unbelievable year Sam Darnold has had. They talk about Justin Jefferson being the best wide receiver in football, and they talk about Kevin O'Connell being coach of the year. So don't give me this crap that nobody talks about us. We're the ugly duckling and all this other crap. Bull. That's wrong, all right? Red Wings snap a 4-game slide by scoring 4 times in the first. They double up the Capitals 4-2. Alex DeBrincat had a pair of goals. Patrick Kane had a goal and an assist. And Lucas Raymond had a goal and an assist. Kane now 1,300 career points. The second U.S.-born player to do that. 38th player overall. Only Mike Modano as a U.S.-born player has more. The beauty of sports. Detroit 13 wins going in against a team that had 24 wins going in and was second in their division by a point. That's it. They were a point back of leading the Metropolitan. And yet Detroit goes out and beats them. Ovechkin did score a goal. Here's our poll question for the day. Would you rest some of your starters against the Niners tonight? Yes or no? Vote as often as you want at XB Mornings. I've retweeted it as well. We'll get to the final results of Friday's poll question. We'll have our daily wager brought to you by Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort. That's coming up at 8:35 because we had to push that back a little bit. But at 8:18, when we return, we will give you our hero and our heel. If you've got one, text it to us, Sports Radio to 21,000, or call the Meyer hotline, 866-838-4843.
Make your New Year's Eve celebration and football
All right, back with you on X's and Bros. Don't forget, later on this afternoon on the same great station affiliates, The Huge Show. My friend Bill Simonson from 3 to 6, Monday through Friday, here on the Michigan Sports Network. Hero and Heel. We give it to you every Monday, 8:18 is when we give you this segment, and we welcome yours via the text line, Sports Radio to 21,000, or on the Meyer hotline, 866-838-4843. I had a tough time with the Hero because there were a lot of them, I thought, over the weekend. A lot of heels, too. But over the weekend, I thought about the Latvian goalie at the World Junior Championships. Leonards Feldbergs made 55 saves in Latvia's 3-2 shootout win, tournament opening win over Canada. Just the country's third win in 38 World Junior games. Then they played the Team USA and lost 5-1 on Saturday. But I went with, and this is unfortunately a little obvious, but because of the accolades, I think it's deserving. I went with Saquon Barkley. All right, Eagles running back 31 times on the carry yesterday, 167 yards with a blowout win over the Cowboys. I wonder where the conversation is about Mike McCarthy in Dallas now. But anyway, 11th time this year he's eclipsed 11th time this year he's eclipsed 100 yards in a game. His final carry earned him 23 yards down the left sideline and got him past the 2,000-yard barrier. He becomes the 9th player in history to surpass 2,000 yards rushing in a single season. Here are the other 8. O.J. Simpson, Hall of Famer. Eric Dickerson, Hall of Famer. Barry Sanders, Hall of Famer. Terrell Davis, Hall of Famer. Jamal Lewis, Chris Johnson, Adrian Peterson, Hall of Famer. Derrick Henry will be. He's now 101 yards shy of breaking Eric Dickerson's single-season rushing record of 2,105, set back in 1984. He also set the Philadelphia franchise record for yards from scrimmage with 2,263 that was held by LaShawn McCoy. The Eagles have clinched the NFC East for the second time in 3 years. Could not have done it without Saquon Barkley. Here's my hero of the weekend. Who's yours, Trent?
Great pick, Shep. We are witnessing history with Saquon Barkley. For people of my generation, he's one of the best we've ever seen. So it's terrific. My hero is NFC division contenders. Bear with me here. The Rams beat the Cardinals. The Buccaneers crushed the Panthers. And the Vikings beat the Packers. All 3 of those teams are down to the wire in their division races. All 3 teams pulled out a win under pressure. I know there's always pressure every single week. It's the NFL. But those were 3 huge games over the weekend. All 3 teams delivered. I'm not happy about the last one. Vikings over the Packers, obviously. But we want exciting December football, maybe into the new year. We want exciting January football at the end of the regular season here, Shep. And these teams all delivered for us. So I'll give all of them collectively the hero.
Yep. The Rams got the division win. Washington, with their win, clinched a playoff spot. Tampa came close. Baker Mayfield was unbelievable, wasn't he? 5 touchdown passes. He got me a fantasy football win. Good for him and good for Tampa. All right, here's my heel. We give you a heel as well. Not just the best player, coach, league, franchise over the weekend, but the worst as well. My heel is the Indianapolis Colts. It's a really good wrap-up of what took place yesterday and over the weekend on the teams that needed to win. Well, Indianapolis was in that conversation. They needed to win to keep their playoff hopes alive. Remember this, besides the teams you mentioned, Trent, Cincinnati was part of that too. Cincinnati played Denver. If Denver had beaten the Bengals in Cincy, they would have made the playoffs. They didn't win. Joe Burrow was great yet again, 3 touchdowns, over 400 yards. Jamar Chase was great yet again. Cincinnati wins that game in overtime. Some questionable decision-making down the stretch in regulation, but Cincinnati wins that game in overtime. They needed that just to keep their playoff hopes alive. So you could even throw them into
good call. Yeah,
what you had just talked about. Indianapolis was supposed to be part of that conversation too. They had so much to play for, needed a win to keep their playoff hopes alive. They were playing the New York Giants in New York, a team that had gone winless at home. I make a lot of Detroit's undefeated record on the road, and rightfully so. They're the only team that has yet to lose on the road. The Giants hadn't won a home game all year. They have lost 10 consecutive games at home. Indy goes out, turns the ball over 3 times, gives up 389 total yards, allows Drew Lock, the backup quarterback, and at some point, Brian Daboll, the head coach of the Giants, made him the third-string quarterback because when Daniel Jones was cut, who did they start? Tommy flippin' DeVito. Even though they had
Tommy
signed Drew
Cutlets
Lock in the offseason, Drew Lock starts. He throws a career-high 4 touchdown passes. The Giants scored 45 points. Do you know the last time the Giants had scored 45 points? It was 2015. Because the Giants win, the Colts are eliminated. They drop to 7-9. New York improves to 3-12 and gives me my heel of the weekend in the Indianapolis Colts. Who's yours?
Good call, Shep. I'm going to stick with football. The Cleveland Browns. Now, you might be thinking, Trent, what are you talking about? They just restructured Deshaun Watson's contract. It's a little more team friendly now. Here's the thing. It was never a good idea. It was stupid. This is what they should have done, or they should have cut him earlier. But, Shep, I want to zoom out here.
Mm-hmm.
Coming off the run the Guardians just had, and the Cleveland Cavaliers right now are probably they are the best team in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah.
And the
They're
Cleveland Browns.
They're fun to watch, man. There's no doubt about that.
They are a fun watch. I've got buddies who are Cleveland fans. They love Darius Garland, Spida, Donovan Mitchell, all those guys.
They love Darius Garland.
They love DG. They love them some DG.
Okay.
But
easy on the nicknames. Nobody knows him as DG.
It's like Adrian Dantley, AD. I can't do that.
Adrian Dantley's a Hall of Famer. Darius Garland is not. But go ahead. They've only got 4 losses. Go ahead.
Fair enough. They only have 4 losses. So I'm just you're putting up 3 points against the Miami Dolphins, who are also not a good team. It's part of a bigger narrative here. We'll see how this Deshaun Watson thing plays out, but they're a mess in Cleveland. They have no idea what they're doing. And you brought up a great anecdote earlier in the show, Shep. They have a generational talent in Myles Garrett on the defensive side of the ball, and yet they can't compete for X. So the Cleveland Browns are my heel from the weekend.
I think it's a good one. I mean, it's a dysfunctional franchise right now, isn't it? And when you don't know, look, you went all in with one guy. The problem is that one guy, what had he proven up until that point? And it would be interesting to go back and see what the reaction was for the Browns when they signed Deshaun Watson. Do you remember what people were saying back then?
My recollection of it, Shep, was I think a lot of people were skeptical of it, but they understood the swing. Obviously, he had everything going on in his personal life, but the last we saw of him, he was terrific. So I think it was a big swing, but I don't think anyone was coming out and saying this is terrible. I thought they were just going to kind of wait and see. Obviously, it didn't age well.
Yeah, he had the big year. You're right. But we always, not you and I, but people oftentimes associate quarterbacking with winning, right? So he had the big year you were talking about.
Yeah.
Right? That was the last year he was in Houston in 2020, right? 4,800 yards. They went 4-12 that year. So how big was it?
Well, I don't know, but you're exactly right. I mean,
33. He threw 33 touchdowns and 7 picks.
Another big part of the conversation too, Shep, was they're like, Baker Mayfield just won you a playoff game.
Yeah,
you're the Cleveland Browns. You really want to move on from Baker Mayfield for Deshaun Watson, one Heisman guy to another? It was a big risk.
Deshaun Watson, 3 games above 500 in Houston, and what I would consider, 4 years, is it enough? Last couple of years, yeah, it probably was. Look, he put up big numbers. There's no doubt about that. And he did win double-digit games in 2 of those 4 years. But considering what he had gone through, considering he had the year off prior to going to Cleveland, big swing and a miss. You're right, a dysfunctional franchise. We get to the final results from our poll question on Friday when we come back on X's and Bros.
Huge here for my good friend Josh Garvey. Now, Josh.
right, back with you on X's and Bros. Every day in the 8 o'clock hour, we give you the final results from the poll question from the day before, and we give you our daily wager brought to you by Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort. It's there in the upper right hand, or depending on how you're looking at, left-hand corner of our screen. We asked you on Friday, how do you feel about the firing of Derek Lalonde and replacing him with Todd McClellan? Like, I believe most people are all fired up over the firing of Derek Lalonde, unfortunately. Hate it anytime somebody loses a job. But it's hard. It's tough business, right? But it's the replacing him with Todd McClellan that I found pretty interesting, too. That's why we threw that in there. McClellan lost his first game Friday against Toronto and then came back, and he and his team were winners over the Capitals yesterday 4-2. So did you totally agree with it? Did you like the firing but not the replacement? Or did you disagree with the move? What were the final results?
78% said they totally agree with it. 19% like it, but not the McClellan replacement, and only 3% disagree. So if you add up the other two, 97% of people are okay with moving on from Derek Lalonde.
I wonder what the reasoning behind somebody disagreeing with the move in general would be.
Me too.
Why would you think, and he's a nice guy, all right? This is not an indictment. When you fire somebody, it's not an indictment on their character. Sometimes it's on their job performance. Sometimes it's because new people come in and they feel like they've got to make a splash. We've got to do something. I got to put my stamp on this organization. You've seen it time and time again. Well, that was not the case with Steve Yzerman. He recognized I thought his press conference was pretty revealing. You know, he recognized his.
I thought he was great at the podium
where he was talking about, this is something I've been thinking about for a little bit now. And this had to require some planning because you can't just fire the guy and then it's over. You had to have conversations with somebody else while the other guy was still coaching.
Right.
And part of the reason Todd McClellan comes over, he wanted to bring in Trent Yawney with him. So that's why two guys are part of that. But I'm glad people took the time to vote. All right, the daily wager. What was it on Friday? Because I'd forgotten what it was on Friday.
It was bad.
It was a bad week for you.
I had the Nuggets.
What the daily wager was, and then what do you have for us here today?
Yeah, it was on Friday. I had the Nuggets to beat the Cavs. The Cavs won by 14. So
that's right. Yeah,
the Cavaliers just keep rolling. But tonight, Shep, this is maybe my favorite bet of in a long time, let's say. And I'm hoping that we can win this one easily. I've just got Brock Purdy to throw a pick over a half an interception. It's minus 177, so there's not great value there. You bet $5, you win $2 and change. But I have got to imagine, you and I have talked all morning about the players that are and aren't available for the Lions. The secondary, ironically, is one of the areas for the Lions that's still pretty much intact. I know you don't have Carlton Davis, but Kirby Joseph's due for a pick. Brian Branch is due for a big play. Someone's going to pick off Brock Purdy tonight.
And you would think that there would be plenty of pressure. San Francisco, without Trent Williams, they were going to start 2 third-string offensive linemen. That doesn't always mean immediate success. The Lions have had backup guys on the defensive side of the ball for most of the year, okay? And they have still been able to perform at a very high level. It has not been exactly what you thought it was going to be, all right? Defensive numbers sometimes can hide some things. But overall, I think Detroit's defense, you would have to agree, has been pretty damn good considering the circumstances and what they've had to deal with. What are your overall? So I would think Detroit could put some pressure on Brock Purdy here tonight. And I think Aaron Glenn's done a nice job of finding different ways to do that. Even without his star players, he's found different ways to do that. It's going to be really necessary next Sunday night against Minnesota. I mean, we're going to be talking about that later on this week. That is going to be vital against Sam Darnold. If you noticed look, any quarterback who has time, I don't care if it's Brock Purdy, Sam Darnold, you name it, Kenny Pickett yesterday for Philadelphia. You give them time. It's hard to cover for an extended period of time. You give that quarterback time, he's going to pick you apart, right? Well, when Sam Darnold and Minnesota come calling, and we'll talk about it later in the week, when they come calling, that's going to be vital for Detroit. They've got to get to Sam Darnold. Make him get out of the pocket. Certain guys, you don't want them outside the pocket. Patrick Mahomes, you don't want outside the pocket. Josh Allen, you do not want outside the pocket. Sam Darnold, you don't mind that situation. Although I would say this, he threw a couple of passes yesterday when he was rolling that I thought was really impressive. There's no doubt he's got a strong arm. He's a big, strong kid, right? How much of it is, and we're not going to get into the Vikings thing, but how much of it is Kevin O'Connell? How much of it is the offense? How much of it is Justin Jefferson? All that other stuff. It's all the above is what it is. All right. And it's a team, you saw the numbers when leading in the fourth quarter, how good they are under Kevin O'Connell. But when you see this kid, no longer a kid, but you see Sam Darnold being able to put together the type of games that he's had on a regular basis for Minnesota, I'm sure it has all those factors. He's still the guy having to make the right read. He's still the guy having to make the throw. He had a throw yesterday when they needed it for a first down late in that ball game to to Justin Jefferson. It was on an out pattern. It's just about a 6-yard gain, I believe. They needed 4, I think, to get the first down. He rolled to his right. He threw it, and I think Kevin Burkhardt, who was calling the game, said, what a great catch by Justin Jefferson. The throw was more impressive. There was only one area, and it was a porthole in which that ball could have been thrown. And he hit him right where he had to. The precision of many of these quarterbacks. Jared Goff's the same conversation, right? The precision of these guys in which they throw simply amazes me. There are certain things in sports where you look at and you're like, how do you keep doing that? I don't get it. Anthony Edwards, a couple of nights ago from Minnesota, hit a 3 on the wing that allowed the Timberwolves to stage a 15-point comeback in the final 5 minutes or final 2 minutes. It might have been the final 2 minutes. And he hit a 3 on the left wing. I was like, that's a terrible shot. He made it like it was a free throw, for crying out loud, right? I watch golf clips over and over and over again. To see Scotty Scheffler hit his irons a specific distance, and I mean precise to the yardage. When people say, I hit my whatever, right? My gap wedge, I hit it 150 yards. Scotty Scheffler says that it's 150 on a regular basis. There was a great little tutorial, if you will, where somebody said to Scotty Scheffler, we're going to take every club, want to know how far you hit it. And he says, and he marked up, he was within a yard of every single club.
Incredible.
That's how precise he was. It was incredible. And it's the same thing with quarterbacking. And the same thing with some of these receivers, what they do. The athleticism is beyond belief. How they're able to keep both feet in bounds while catching a pass, somebody draped in front of them, concentrating on it. You've got 70,000 people there. You've got lights taking place. You got a ball coming your way. It's cold. It's windy. You're not, quote unquote, playing for much. You got a guy in front of you, and you're still hauling it in and keeping both feet in bounds.
Professional athletes, man.
Oh, it really is. For as
we take it for granted every now and then.
Did you see the pass by, who was it? Mitch Marner finished it off. I don't know if it was John Tavares. Eyes in the back, because it was against Detroit Friday night. Between the legs, cross ice, one-timer by Mitch Marner. Amazing.
Yeah.
For some reason, the Four-Letter Network didn't think it was impressive as a one-handed dunk down the middle of the lane, so it got the number 2 spot on their top 10. But just simply spectacular. Just an amazing play. And I love watching those types of athletes do it night in and night out. For as long as I've been doing this, I'm still amazed at how good certain guys. That is, to me, this is what I tell my wife and my daughter all the time. I tell them the best reality. Stop watching influencers. Stop watching so-called reality shows, Dancing with the Stars or whatever. It's not reality, okay? Most of that stuff is all planned, right? The best reality is sports, and it's not even close. There's nothing scripted there. Okay, maybe Cal Ripken hitting a home run in his last All-Star game. That's an All-Star. That's not even a game per se. I'm talking about every single Sunday, every single night you're watching stuff. It's amazing. It's not an All-Star game. The All-Star games are. Okay, the NBA All-Star game, it's a racket, right? I mean,
who
those guys
cares?
don't give a crap, right? All that stuff. Every night you're watching a sporting event, it's amazing what you're going to see. You're going to be wowed at some point during the game. You're going to be wowed by what a player does during that.
And the cast, if you will,
the best.
The cast of players, of characters, the players, the guys actually playing the sport, it's unscripted, obviously.
Yeah,
so I mean,
there's no script. There's a script in the NBA All-Star game. There's a script in the NHL All-Star game. There is, I mean, the Pro Bowl games. Yeah, I mean, there's certain guys that are going to let them get there. There is nothing like that on an every night basis. It's a beautiful thing. It's a lot of fun to watch. What's your confidence level on the Lions in San Francisco tonight?
Pretty high, because I just think, a couple ways to look at this.
Back, right? Khalif Raymond was seated at practice the other day. Jalen Reeves Maven was spotted at practice the other day. Not that they're necessarily going to play, though. I mean, those are encouraging signs.
Yeah, you're getting guys back. And the Lions, like Dan Campbell has said, and we've talked about all morning, he plans on playing everybody. And if it's just Lions at full strength against 49ers at full strength, the Lions win that game by, I think, like 2 touchdowns. We'll see.
Here's what I love about the Lions. This is what I've really grown to appreciate, how they go about their business. I know the end result is the most important thing for all of us. All right. But what I appreciate more than anything else is how this team practices and how this team is able and willing to forget what took place the week before. I've said this time and time again this year, but it's worth repeating because of how impressive it truly is and how much they truly care. I saw it was a social media tweet, so it's not a big deal. And I'm sure there are people out there who get pissed off about it. All right, because again, there are certain expectations. Team doesn't meet these expectations. You gotta be pissed off at somebody. But it was making the rounds for the Miami Dolphins, who beat Cleveland 20-3, but they're not making the playoffs, right? Noah Tua Tagovailoa. He's walking out in a sweatsuit, and somebody had tweeted, "You want to see a guy who makes a lot of money but doesn't care? Here you go." So this kind of ties into what you and I were talking about earlier with the Lions. It's a different situation, granted. But people view him as a guy who doesn't care. There's no reveal of what his injury was that I've been able to find. People feel like the perception is, at least for this sourpuss, this person who feels like Miami didn't achieve what they expected. And look, they didn't achieve what you thought either. Trent, you thought they were going to win the division. The perception is he doesn't care because he's not dressed. He's not playing in that game. He may not play in the final game. Okay. Granted, this is a guy who missed plenty of time earlier this year and was concussed. To tell me he doesn't care, I find hard to believe. Not because he makes a lot of money. That's always the association. Guy makes a lot of money, not going to play. He doesn't really care. That dude was concussed and missed a considerable amount of time.
People were talking about him retiring. They were saying he should retire.
People were saying he should retire.
For his health.
It wasn't just talking heads who were saying he should retire.
Doctors.
There were players were saying, I would get out right now. Leave. It's not worth it. They were saying all this stuff. To tell me a guy, he doesn't care when he comes from back from that situation.
Yeah, lunacy.
Come on, give me a break, okay? That is the emotional part of sports. Sometimes we love it, but sometimes we can't stand it. And what a short memory we truly have. And it happens to all of us, first and foremost, but it happens not just with injuries, but with production as well. Aaron Judge was booed in the playoffs because he struggled for the Yankees. Aaron Judge. Booed in the playoffs because he struggled for the Yankees in the postseason, especially in the World Series. But during the regular season, that team doesn't win the division. They're not playing in the World Series without Aaron Judge, right? Do you boo him because of that? Unfair, I think, right? You're going to have on days, you're going to have off days for sure. And the emotional part of sports, as much as we may love it, really can get the best of us sometimes. It is difficult for all of us to kind of step back and say, you know what? What about this situation, right? We've said it time and time again. You can say it about a lot of players in Detroit as well, okay? I've said it about Jamison Williams, where I've been frustrated at some of his actions. and how he hasn't done what he's supposed to do. But I also remind you, and I think I've been fair about this, he's done a hell of a job blocking downfield, and he's done a hell of a job of, for the most part, of doing what he's supposed to do in the assignments. His give a blank is pretty high, it seems like to me, when you're watching him play on a regular basis. So you got to give him credit. Some of the things that he's done frustrate the hell out of me. That's going to happen. Let's not go so far as to say, well, I'd cut his ass, or I want nothing to do with that guy.
Or he doesn't care.
He doesn't care. And I've said this time and time again, but it's very true. And that's the reason I keep repeating. It's really hard to put yourself in somebody else's situation and saying that person doesn't care, because we all show things how much we care differently. I may be super energetic and I may have a ton of energy when it comes to certain things. I may be passionate about certain things, but just because I may be talking about it at a higher octave than you doesn't mean that I care more. We all have different ways of showing it. Let's get to a quick text before we get out of here on a Monday. You can text us always at Sports Radio to 21,000. What is it?
John from Holt, loyal listener. Always appreciate your text. He gave us a hero and heel submission. He says, hero, Red Wings, heel, Green Bay Packers.
From our standpoint, not
Yes.
the heel from Minnesota. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to go so far as to give the Red Wings a hero when they just snapped a 4-game slide, but I do like the way they started and the way they played yesterday more than we have in recent memory. So let's hope it's the start of something, John. So I'm with you in that regard. Our thanks to your text. Our thanks to your time. That's what's most important. Your time is valuable, and for us to be part of your day means an awful lot to us. We'll be back tomorrow morning here on X's and Bros, starting at 6 a.m. across the great state of Michigan on the Michigan Sports Network. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, everybody.
How would you like to run the Bank of America Chicago Marathon or the BMW Berlin Marathon with the Van Andel Institute Marathon Team? Every year, the VAI Marathon Team raises thousands